How do you change yourself? People ask us a lot. They find themselves knowing what it is that they want to do differently, but getting stuck on how. And I want to share a little neuroscience with you and help you understand how your brain works. And this is going to give you the key in how you respond. In the 6 Seconds model of emotional intelligence, one of the core competencies is what we call recognizing patterns. Patterns are a system of how your brain is operating. It's almost like a routine that's been programmed in. Like in software, you might write a little piece of code that says, do this thing. Your brain has these patterns that it uses over and over and over again. The reason we have patterns is because our brains are craving efficiency. Our brains are constantly starved for energy. So in order to have more energy, one of the things that our brains do is automate certain processes. And we get into this little autopilot technique that makes it more efficient for us. We're able to go through our day, do this on autopilot and do that on autopilot, follow this pattern, follow that pattern. We don't have to think so much. And because we don't have to think so much, we're able to go faster and it's easier for our brains. Increased efficiency. So what are patterns? Think about how a stream forms. You can imagine it rains and water starts trickling down a little bit and it maybe makes a little pathway on the hill. Next time it rains, the water finds that path, carves it a little deeper. Next time, a little deeper. Next time, a little deeper. Pretty soon you have the Grand Canyon. As we form these patterns, almost the same thing is happening in our brains. I'll explain the neuroscience. To understand the neurobiology of these patterns, which is going to give you a tool for changing them, it's important to learn a little bit about how your brain works. Bing! There is a brain cell. This is the cell body. These are what are called dendrites. And this is the axon, the long communication trunk of the cell. And we're going to need another one. Bing! And now we have 2 brain cells. And these dendrites are actually moving all the time. I mean, they move very rapidly. It takes about a 10,000th of a second for one dendrite to move and reconnect. So this little gap here between the 2 dendrites, we can get them till we can almost see it. Get it till you almost see it. That little tiny gap is called a synapse. And you have tens of billions of synapses in your brain. And that's where the action happens. And essentially when you have one network of these cells and another network of these cells, and the dendrite moves and reconnects, bing, we have this connection between this neural network and this neural network. That's learning. You just learned something. Just like that water rivulet going down the hill and turning into a stream, you are learning and deepening, and it's becoming easier and more efficient for this to be associated with this, for these neurons to fire together, because when neurons fire together, they wire together. Not only are the dendrites moving, but actually at the tip of every one of these dendrites where they're connecting, there's a little set of receptor sites, kind of like blocks. This little place where these chemicals are stored. And the chemicals are released and they go through that little tiny synapse. They get absorbed on the other one, on the receptor sites. And we have to have locks that match the keys. The more you put a particular neurohormone on a cell, the more receptor sites will grow. So not only are you creating more efficiency by having more and more of these interconnections with these dendrites moving, but at a cellular level, every one of these brain cells is becoming more and more efficient based on how you are using it. That means if you practice a lot of regret and doubt and self-recrimination, your brain gets really good at that. If you practice a lot of joy and wonder and hope, your brain gets good at that. We're wiring into our brains this efficiency in order to follow these patterns to make it easy for our brains to say, you don't have to think about this. I got it. I'll take care of it. Our brains just want to make everything easy for us so we can go fast, we can be efficient, don't have to think too much. But there's a problem with that. Getting off autopilot. Thing is that our brains don't really care if we follow this pattern in a way that's optimal. Remember, our brains are looking for efficiency. So it's kind of like when you're driving down the road and you're listening to the GPS on your phone and it's turn left on Smith Street and you just kind of turn the wheel and you're not really paying attention. I remember this one time, one of my kids and I were in the middle of a desert. We're in a little town, we'd stopped for breakfast and we're leaving the town and the GPS said, turn left on Smith Street, and I started to turn left. There's no street there. The sand had blown over the street. This is what's happening to all of us. We're in a world that's changing, but we're following the patterns that we had before. Our brains have created this tremendous efficiency to do what we used to do. And now we're saying, hey, I want to do something different. So the first step for us to get off autopilot is to notice that we're on it. So the trick is to tune in and start to notice our own recurring reactions. And we have these three parts. If we tune in and we start looking at our thoughts and our feelings and our actions, how our feelings interact with our thinking, how our feelings interact with our actions, and we start to notice and say, I've been there before. I recognize this. When you start to see these recurring reactions, you're recognizing your patterns. And that's going to be the first step to changing them. Hi, I'm Josh Freedman. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please share it, like it, subscribe, comment. That really helps us with our work to bring emotional intelligence to everyone in the world. These are skills that are really needed in the world right now, and we need you to help us help others.